Well, thanks for having me here today. It's good to see everybody. My gosh, it's such an impressive showing. Anyway, I run NFIB's Small Business Legal Center, and the main reason we did want to talk to you today is about healthcare. No, that issue hasn't completely gone away. We, as hopefully most, if not all of you know, joined the 20 states on March 14th, or May 14th, sorry, and sued the government on the constitutionality of Obamacare. We, our members were very upset with the law as it turned out. Were asking us, what are we going to do about it? I mean, I didn't even get in the door before it was clear that, you know, I was up next, if you will, when it came to the healthcare law and what it meant for small business and what we at NFIB could do for small business to fight it. And so therefore, we did join the 20 states, as I mentioned, in the lawsuit that they have filed that's in the Florida District Court. We believe that the individual mandate in particular is unconstitutional, and quite frankly, view this more not just as a healthcare issue anymore. I mean, this is really about all of our fundamental liberties, the liberties of our members, their ability to own, operate, and grow their business. We think is significantly undermined by this law, because if the individual mandate in particular is allowed to stand, then you're really not going to see a congressional backstop, if you will, to what Congress can require all of us to do, you know, to meet whatever goals for society they have. So, you know, I do not think it's a stretch. I do not think it's too much to say that if the government can require you to buy insurance or pay a fine simply because you're alive, then if they want a healthier society, they could require you to buy a gym membership. If they wanted a cleaner society, they could require you to get a new car every 5 years. I do not think that's a stretch, unfortunately, if this law is upheld, and that's why we think this is beyond just healthcare itself. The government, interestingly, does see that there are some Commerce Clause issues with their law that they're defending, and so therefore when we saw their response to our joining and their motion to dismiss, which they filed a couple weeks ago, they are now calling it a tax, which if you were following the debate at all, you heard on numerous occasions the president and all of those that were supporting the law say this is not a tax, this is absolutely not a tax. Well, for legal purposes, they now want it to be a tax because Congress's power to tax is, of course, much broader than its power to regulate inactivity, which we think it doesn't have.
So there's been a lot of coverage of federal government workers doing pretty well in the downturn, and a lot of, you know, basically the average wages, you know, the federal employees getting being well above those of private sector workers. To which the government employees unions always come back with, well, yes, but our workers are more skilled, so it's you can't make that comparison. Well, what my paper does is it goes through and, you know, controls for skills, you know, experience, you know, demographic characteristics, all the things that you'd expect to affect wages. And what you find out is, yes, that it does explain part of the gap. But even when you control for all those observable characteristics, federal employees are still earning about 22% above comparable, you know, market wages in terms of cash pay. Add in the value of their non-cash benefits, and it's a bit harder to account for those, but you're looking at 30 to 40% greater total compensation for employees who serve in the federal government. And if we knock them down to market rates, that would be savings to taxpayers each year of about $47 billion a year. So by no means chump change. That would basically cover the cost of patching the alternative minimum tax. It's more money than we spend on the Department of Energy. And on top of that, of course, basically, once you've passed your one-year probationary period, it's almost impossible to fire these federal employees. It's, I mean, it's like you've got a few hundred employees each year get fired out of a federal workforce of millions. And the federal employees know they're getting a really good deal, because if you take a look at how likely they are to quit their jobs, it's less than a third that of the rate of private sector workers. So once they get in, they're not eager to leave unless they've got a really good deal waiting for them on the other side. So it's kind of ridiculous that you'd have this protected class of civil servants, making much higher wages than their counterparts in the private sector do, insulated from any of the layoffs, the downturns of the recession, and yet we talking about tax increases to close this deficit. This is a very obvious place to start. Now, what you don't want to do is you don't want to say, all right, let's cut everyone's pay, compensation down by 30%, because that's just an average figure. You've actually got some of the federal employees who are not getting overpaid, because basically it's tenure. It's you get paid on how long you've been in the federal government. So if you're productive and skilled and really putting in a solid work week, well, you get paid just as much as the slacker. And so you don't want to sort of knock down the pay of those who are getting paid according to what they're putting in. A better solution would be to do what the Bush administration tried to do with DOD and the Department of Homeland Security, where you get rid of the general schedule, get rid of the automatic step increases, and turn it to a system of performance-based pay, where the pay bands are set basically on signals of market demand, such as how many qualified applicants are there for each vacancy, what are the quit rates. So if you're having 50 applicants for every vacancy and nobody's ever quitting, you're overpaying them, and knock that pay down. So move to a performance-based system, expand the use of contracting out, so you're having as much as possible for these jobs. You're having the private sector, do things like mowing the grass outside of the Pentagon instead of having government employees doing that. I mean, there's no reason to have the government doing a lot of these positions. Knock down the generosity of some of their benefits, like the retirement system. In most of the world, you either get a defined benefit or a defined contribution pension, but if you work for Uncle Sam, you get both. And that's part of where the disparity is coming from. So reduce the generosity of the benefits to be more in line with what private sector employers provide, and get rid of the guaranteed you basically can't fire us unless we're beyond incompetent protections. End that restriction and basically knock it back down to what they have after the first year in the probationary period. So if you've got poor performance, you can get rid of them, which is where a lot of the problems come with, because it doesn't matter how hard you work, how much you're going to get paid in the federal government. So what's the incentive to work? If you've got the risk of losing these rather cushy jobs, then you're going to see the performance kick up there. And so if you adopted these kinds of measures, you'd be saving on the order of roughly $50 billion a year. And I mean, it's not going to put our fiscal house in order all by itself, but it's a relatively painless way of reducing the federal budget, and the only people it's hurting are those who are getting too much of a good thing as it now stands.